So, hello. Welcome to the Reinvention show. I am so excited to be back with you. You know, I took a break. I was flying across the world for the first time in 2 years. So, I missed you guys. I'm so happy so many of you have asked when the show will be back. And today we have a really special one for you and an amazing guest. But those of you who've never been to the Reinvention show, what are we about? This is the place where we explore how we can live in a world of constant uncertainty and nonstop disruption. And how can we not just survive these conditions, but actually thrive in them? For me, this is an opportunity to share resources, to bring amazing people, to have a conversation, to learn from you. So please do connect in the chat wherever you're joining us from. And to get that going, let me know where you join us from, not just the platform wise, but the country. And I see you already. Germany is in the house. Michael is here from Dusseldorf. Welcome. Excited to have you. Let me know in the chat where you join me from. I am back in Columbus, Ohio, United States. I spent just over 2 weeks traveling to Germany, then to Kazakhstan, and then back to US. This was exceptionally important thing to come out of the shell after COVID-19. And I have a lot of reflections that I will keep sharing with you across different shows, across different events. And of course, we explore in depth at the Stellar and Reinvention Club and inside the Reinvention Academy programs. But let me know in the comments, where are you joining me from? What's on top of your mind? And while you're doing that, let me set the stage for you. Today we are talking about zombies, and it's not The Walking Dead. We are not reviewing movies. We are gonna talk about corporate culture, mindset, and structures that create conditions in which we pretty much become zombies at work and in life, and how that can be prevented so our companies can renew themselves when it's necessary, so that innovation becomes possible, so that disruption is not perceived as the most horrific thing happening, but actually used as a resource. And in that sense, I'm incredibly delighted that today we have a guest who is the expert on corporate zombies. He joins us from UK, an amazing best-selling author, and of course, advisor and consultant and coach on all things related to innovation. Elvin Turner, welcome to the show.
Hello, really great to be here. It's an honor. I've been watching you from afar, and I'm finally here talking with you. So really great to be here today.
I'm so excited. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive straight into it.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between unicorns and zombies?
Well, it's interesting how this all came about in the first place. I was running a business school program, and we were just talking about what is it that separates the great innovators from everybody else. And we drew a line on the floor at the beginning at the front of the workshop. And I said, okay, at this end, we have unicorns, and we need something at the other end, an organization that's lurching for its next meal, kind of the living dead. The zombie came up as the idea. And I said, okay, now go and stand in a position to all of the delegates, that represents your company best. And everybody ran to the zombie end. No one else went anywhere else. And I said, well, this is really interesting. What is it, that's going on here? So that's kind of where the idea came from. But really, I mean, for me, it's you can simplify it down to, Jeff Bezos's approach of day one. It's always day one. We don't take anything for granted. We've done something that has succeeded historically. But we all know that there are weak signals coming from the future. There are trends that are coming together that will ultimately change the way that we show up, what we do, how we do it. And if we don't take the initiative to continually reinvent ourselves, one day we'll be dead. We'll be in the graveyard. We'll be a zombie. We'll be the living dead. And it's that mindset of choosing to continually innovate, and we never switch it off, which is, for me, the starting point. It's the separator between the great and everybody else.
I love that. In our community, we talk about Titanic syndrome as this thing that takes over. We start up with a lot of zest. We're definitely not that. A typical startup starts with a lot of zest, with a lot of joy, with a lot of true focus on value creation. And then something happens as the company starts to scale, and Titanic syndrome takes over, where we are bringing about our own downfall by our own arrogance, our own attachment to the status quo, to the past success, our inability to see those weak signals. And it's easier said than done to prevent this. Seems simple, but I am the first one to admit that I get sick on a regular basis. I have a moments of zombieism in my life on a regular basis. So how do we prevent it from happening in our own career, in our team, in our companies?
Well, I think the first thing is to really zoom out and say, what is the progress that we're enabling here? Why are we here? Why us? Why us? Why now? Why this? And zoom out and try and identify. I mean, people may be familiar with the framework around jobs to be done, which is, we look at, in any context, what progress is a customer or a client trying to make, and we break that down into a flow, and they're doing different things at different stages. If we look at that, often we can see that over a period of time, history will show us that the technology that people buy to get that job done changes every few years. And at every point, look at the music industry, from vinyl to cassette to CD to streaming. At the transition of those changes, of those industry shifts, very few organizations actually make the leap. Many die. So the vehicle of progress changes quite regularly, but the underlying progress doesn't really change very much at all. And what I encourage organizations to do is to focus on the progress. So you look at Netflix, so great example. They started as a DVD company and now they're a streaming company, only they're not. If you ask them what they exist to do, they say they exist to help customers find great movies, help people find great movies. That used to be with a DVD, and they knew full well that streaming was coming, so they start to invest now for the future that's coming, because the progress they can see, that is going to help our customers be able to make better progress in 5-10 years time. That's what we're here to do, help them make better progress. So holding on to progress and then extrapolating forward to see what are going to be the forces of change that come, or that we can provoke, that will allow our customers to be the highest performing customers, because they can make more progress than anyone else. When you have that as your metric, when you have that as your foundation of we exist to help increase progress, we let go of our need to defend what we've built today, because we know there's a better tomorrow coming. And we align ourselves and we put metrics and measures in place that stop us from clinging on to what ultimately kills us. And we're more motivated to pursue the things that pull us to a more prosperous future.
Well, here comes a very difficult challenge, especially right now in this post-COVID, not really post yet world. Mm-hmm. And by the way, to our wonderful audience, please do put in the comments your questions, your comments, and we'll start putting some resources, including where to find Elvin's wonderful, really pragmatic book, Be Less Zombie: How Great Companies Create Dynamic Innovation, Fearless Leadership, and Passionate People. You will find that link in the comments in a second. But for me, the challenge that I am facing again and again as I'm entering companies around the world is we're overwhelmed. This has been very difficult few years. We cannot handle any more progress. We just need to breathe out. We need a breather. We need a break. We are, have a massive number of people resigning. We have a massive issues around burnout. What would be your advice to an organization or to the team that feels like they just cannot handle any more progress?
Well, one of the thoughts I had when I was writing Be Less Zombie was, it could have called it Be More Human, because I think one of the failings of organizations to date has been, we talk a great talk about people in most organizations, but do we really back it up with our actions? And I think one way that you can do that is to see how much organizations load onto people around the amount they're expected to do. Most people that I talk to in the trenches when I'm working in innovation assignments say, I'm already running at 120%. Do you really want me to suggest new ideas so that I get a new evening job, another evening job? I don't have time to do that, and I'm not going to sacrifice more family life for that reason. So for me, yes, we're in a tough season, but I think it's a really important opportunity not to just get pulled further into the cyclone, but to step back and say, how do human beings do their best work? When people are trying to do new things, particularly, what kind of context do they need and how can we create that? Maybe we need to ask people to do less so that we can do more. That's not a new message. We know it. It's been proven in countless studies, and yet we still continue to try and push people to 100%, 120% utilization as stretch assignments, which we all know really is just a way of cost cutting. And we optimize the ability to innovate out of our organizations. The only innovation that ends up happening is firefighting and dealing with issues that we would rather not be dealing with. So my advice to companies is take this moment to say, what kind of company do we want to become? What kind of innovation do we need in the future? What kind of context must we create so that the best people want to come and work here, and so that they can do their best work, and so that we can deliver the future that this company needs to deliver? And I think you really have to bite the bullet. I mean, quite often I get the comment from senior leaders, we've got a creativity crisis in our company. There's no big new ideas. I open the big idea cupboard, there's nothing in there. My counter to that is, no, I don't think you do have a creativity crisis. You have a crisis of context. You don't have a context where people can be creative because there's no time, resources, processes, culture, because we're focused on optimization and efficiency, which doesn't leave the breathing space. So being more human as an organization is also being really smart commercially, because we are deliberately designing the context where today and tomorrow can show up in tandem.
I love that. And let me give our wonderful audience a shout out. By the way, happy to see my Kazakhstan community here. We had 5 live sessions in Kazakhstan on reinvention as a system. Tatiana, happy to see you. Rick is here. Rick, wonderful to reconnect. I'm happy to be back with the show. We actually have an amazing plan for weeks to come. The guests coming in the next weeks are just on fire. So happy to be here. But for me, let me give you a pragmatic solution. And I think I just lost Elvin for a second. Here he is again. Sometimes this happens. Don't worry. Here's Elvin. So for me, Elvin, the pragmatic thing I use for myself and my team to do that human thing you just mentioned around is called a no day. So I am the kind of person who likes new ideas. I like blow things up. I like adding things to the pile. Throughout the whole week, I keep generating and my team keeps generating. What if we do this? What if we add this to the slot? What if we do this? Friday is the day we actually cut things out of our portfolio of projects and say, are we really seeing strategic need? And I know Be Less Zombie opens with a whole section on strategic intent, but is this strategically relevant? And also, not only is this a high potential activity, but also is there organizational preparedness. So pragmatically speaking, we use this super simple 2x2 grid. On one side, there is a potential impact, strategic relevance, and on a vertical axis is organizational readiness or preparedness. Are we able to physically, with our physical, intellectual, financial, material and non-material abilities, handle this idea? And is it strategically relevant? And that day, our Friday is our no day, which is tomorrow, has been a saving grace for us because it then doesn't feel like a scary thing to add a new idea to the pile, because we treat it as a hypothesis. It might be something we will pursue once we have a little bit of time to really assess and test out and decide and so on. And everyone knows on Friday there will be an honest look. And if we cannot handle it, we will get it off our plate onto either parking lot or deletion. And here here I see quite a lot of reactions. So somebody on Facebook says this is amazing. Pat is in upstate New York. She's right here in US, says love this discussion. And somebody else is really giving you a lot of positivity around humanity and ability to thrive. So there's a lot of reaction here, and somebody on LinkedIn as well is really touching on this humanity versus just efficiency. Can you help us with the idea of strategic intent, how you understand, and what are kind of pragmatic tools that you use to clarify the strategic intent? Because currently everything moves so fast. Our research, for example, at Reinvention Academy shows that the typical business model today, the median life cycle of a typical business model across all industries is just about 6 years, with 60% of companies reporting that they need to reinvent every 3 years or less if they want to survive and thrive the constant disruption. In that kind of constant movement, it's hard to figure out, are we staying strategic or are we just opportunistic and grabbing anything that comes our way? How you think of strategic intent, what helps you clarify when you're dealing with your company, those of us who are listening, how can we clarify what's true strategic intent?
Well, I think the starting point is, again, deciding that we are going to do this and we're not going to cop out and say, that's too hard, it's too complex, let's just keep going on what we're doing. And I do see that happening quite a lot. I also see some organizations investing a lot of time and effort and money and team into scenario planning, and they do fantastic work and then nothing happens with it. There is this bridge that's missing between strategy and action. And I think that is the role really that the executive needs to step more into. Too often a senior team, and I don't want this to all be about a blame game. I'm not pretending this is simple. And I think particularly the last season we've been in, it's been very tempting for senior people to step back down into the operations and get their hands, roll their sleeves up and muck in. I understand that. The challenge that we have is every time a senior leader whose unique role is to design and the future and strategy and calibrate dynamically the resources required so that the future can show up. Every time a leader chooses to step down into the weeds, they're robbing from the future. It's that plain for me. And we have to create, first of all, leadership teams who accept responsibility truly for strategy. Quite a lot of leaders don't enjoy that stuff, I find. They love doing their job and actually saying, Jeff Bezos spends 3 days a week, apparently with unstructured time. He's thinking about the future. He's meeting new customers. He's just having crazy thoughts. He's doing the work that he's paid to do. So I think the starting point is, from the leadership team's point of view, how are you spending your time? What is your focus on? What do you need to stop doing? Your point, your Friday, your no Fridays. And what do we need to start doing so that first there is a context in which strategy can show up successfully? And then I think there's that piece of joining, real plausible futures that could be coming into action and making sure that where we've got lab work going on that's connected to that, is there's actually a bridge back into the business. And you see so many labs failing because that integration isn't really there. But if we're looking for a practical tool, I think one of the things that works really well, and I'm absolutely borrowing this from Rita McGrath, by the way, but I use it all the time because it works so well, is picking that future date, exploring what that scenario looks like, and we're understanding how different, as far as we can, how different trends are going to come together and help us show up in a different way. And then pick that date, let's just say it's 2026. Okay, so what would need to be true in the areas of strategic planning, decision making, resource allocation, all of the stuff that's needed for that future state to show up in 2026. We do it as a team, we're around a board, we're using post-it notes. Okay, so if that's going to be true in 26, what needs to be true in 25 in those areas, and in 24 and in 23, right back up to the present day, which then allows us to say, hey, we've got some stuff we can do here. Action planning. So we're all good at action planning. Let's get the plan moving. That's what we're all great at. But what that does is start to create a line of sight between tomorrow and today with clear, actionable things that we can start investing in, experimenting and piloting with. Now, we're not going to get the perfect picture because things are inevitably going to change. Your point, every 3 years, some business models are blowing up. But it's one way of helping us get a tighter grip on what the future might look like and actually start acting on it today and being prepared for the future that's coming.
I love that. And you actually just answered a question that came from someone on Facebook. Unfortunately, I don't know your name, guys. If you want me to know your name, please do give the permission to StreamYard to show your name. But the question is, what should leadership do with scenarios in business as usual times? I thought the scenario planning is for crisis management. Let me add to what you just said. The idea that scenario planning is only necessary for crisis management comes from the era of long corporate cycles where we used to stay in business as usual for decades. So the average life cycle of a typical business model in 20th century was about 75 years. You are in business as usual for like good 50 years of those. You don't need to disrupt anything. You don't really need innovation. You might need a little bit of continuous improvement, touch points and efficiencies, but you're not really disrupting anything and you're not building the new future. Now, what happened now, we are constantly in crisis time. This is the question I ask on a typical session to give me a guess on how many economic crises do you think happen? Technical economic recession, shrinking of the economy of 20% or more since 1988. And the typical numbers I get are in the category between 3 and 10. Occasionally, somebody dares to say something like 50. The reality is, of course, if we just look at the such thing as country level recessions, we're already talking about almost 500, which is one recession every 25 days. If we add to that regional industry and global recessions, we're talking about one recession every 10 days. You're in a crisis every day. If you're not doing scenario planning and you're not using it on a more or less regular basis, you will be constantly playing catch up. And that's why it's so important what Elvin was just describing, the exercise. And after the show, go back and review the show. And he just gave you a full exercise on what to do to build the bridge between the scenario of the future and the activities today, next year, and every year before that future come into reality. And I love that. So that's where that's what Adelia is also reacting. Adelia is in South Africa, of course. Is, oh no, please let's unlearn that scenario planning is for crisis management. As I told you, we have a very passionate community. People start an intellectual fight across platforms. So Adelia is responding on LinkedIn to a message that came from Facebook, but we have a very, very passionate community. So please review and go back to the show to see what Elvin was saying. But what's your reaction on scenario planning being only for the crisis management?
Well, I think you just said it. It's, yeah, you do need it for crisis management, but that's, again, falling into the trap of what we do day to day. It's reactive. We are wired to be reactive. What we're not doing is, as good stewards of our organization, trying to foresee what's coming, but also start to plan what we could do to shift dynamics in our industry. What things that are coming from the future might we choose to take a lead on for the benefit of our customers and those that we try and serve, so that we can create a better future? And I think the benefit of scenario planning is that it presents potential threats that you might want to respond to, but it also is a wonderful opportunity to spark strategic imagination to say, yeah, but wouldn't it be great if AI and drones and this come together in this community, we could suddenly allow them to make 10 times more progress for half the cost, and our market would go crazy. Wouldn't that be incredible? So it's a place to imagine a better future, as well as being prepared for things that could come and harm our business model potentially.
So spending some time in the what if space, not what if we all die tomorrow, but what if we make something positive and possible. By the way, those of you who are looking for a very pragmatic tool to manage an emergent future. You already see in the comments across all platforms a way to download the specific tool that's become our community favorite, the Stellar Strategy Canvas, that specifically allows you to be super, super adaptive. So you remember, you will get that a download, and the canvas looks something like this, right? So it goes through sprints. If you're looking for that tool in your download, this is the visual you're looking for. We're looking at sprints, we're looking for adaptive reality, we are looking for ranges, things that give you freedom rather than pin you to one option and make you a victim of your own plan. I think another reason why so many top managers are afraid of scenario planning and also strategic planning is because it feels almost irrelevant. That the moment we finish planning, the conditions change, the supplier pricing change, the regulation change, the technology change. So our plan is just a piece of paper that is irrelevant. We do now, across the board, in many different school of thought, have amazing tools now available that are much more adaptive, that gives you much more flexibility in your strategic planning. And I invite you to grab the tool. I see that Adele already says that's gold for picking that up. Great. Elvin, on a personal note, how can we be less zombie? Weekend is coming up. It's so tempting to say, I don't want to do anything new. I just want to go back to the old, same old. Any advice at the personal level? How can I be less zombie?
Well, it works at two levels, I think. One is surviving at work at the moment. We've got to look after our energy, and there's lots of stuff out there around how we can take better care of ourselves in the workplace. The whole well-being movement is something that I think every organization should embrace. But I think you're talking more about the mindset, the ambition, who I actually become. And there's a question that I hold in front of myself all of the time, which is, who do I need to become? Which suggests an ongoing journey rather than, I did it, I made it, and now I'm just going to keep trundling along. And a lot of this comes down to personal motivation and purpose. I'm actually going through this again right now. I'm thinking, what's the point of me? I don't mean that at such an existential level, but I'm a guy who turns up, I help boards figure out how to do innovation and roll it out and run training programs, but is that enough? And actually it's not. And so I'm currently looking at myself and thinking, looking back from 10 years time, what are the outcomes that I want to be able to say that I've achieved, and what would need to be true? I'm working in the same way to myself. But I think I guess as a slight aside, one of the things that I've recognized in the work of innovation is that when I'm coaching teams, particularly in the idea space, early, we pull their ideas pieces, put it back together again. At the end of those days, those workshops, people will often come up to me and say, yeah, it's been a really great day. Got really, really feel like our idea is moving. But do you know what? The thing that has really stood out to me today is it's reminded me why I got in this place and into this industry in the first place, why I joined, because you've reminded me about the customer and what they're trying to do. And that's what I'm passionate about. And my day job has pushed that way, way away from me. So creating opportunities for people to innovate is such a wonderful way to re-engage people with the purpose of the organization. So if anyone here is in any way responsible for unleashing innovation or creating opportunities, think about that. You want to create environments where people want to come and work for you. The highest levels of talent come. You have to create that context in which they can do career best work. That's what I talk about now. Help your managers create environments where people can come and do their career best work. That will switch on appetite. That will switch on motivation. That will pull you further into the future.
And it's resonating. So this question, Sherry's reacting. Sherry's in Florida, and she's reacting that this is a great question. Maybe put it on a post and come back to it. Who do I need to become? And there's different horizons. So it's not like we need to beat ourselves over our head with a wooden stick, time to become somebody.
Yeah.
It's more of allowing the answer to emerge, living with that question and using that question as a source of motivation rather than something scary. I know you have wonderful resources. We already shared where they can learn more about the book, but you have, I know, a course available, a free course available for everyone, and of course a TEDx talk. Can you speak a few words about that and then we will close.
Yeah, sure. Well, the course I put together right at the beginning of COVID, because what I was seeing was two things. One, learning and development budgets shutting down, and secondly, innovation budgets shutting down. And yet, when have we ever needed more innovation right in the heart of the crisis? So I thought, well, what's the least I can do? So I put together, I mean, it is a very basic course in terms of the production values. But what I've tried to do is pull out, the key lessons from the book. And even if you don't buy the book, you can get enough from that to help you start doing more innovation, more sustainably, more effectively inside your organization. And people have been using it all over the world because it's free. I mean, it's basically just hosted on my website. Use it, share it. I don't get anything from it. It was a desire to want to help. So that's there. That will probably be there indefinitely. It was originally there just for COVID, but you know what? I'm just going to leave it up there. The TED Talk talks more about the idea of progress, how progress can be the heart of strategy and the jobs to be done. I know someone in the comments mentioned that earlier. So yeah, check that out as well.
Absolutely. This is what you're looking in the comments for, something like this, if you're looking for the course. And I see that people are excited to use the Stellar Canvas. If you want to try that out, there's another free download here as well. Tons of great resources, guys. Now, any last advice you have to give as we are approaching the end of the year? This is it. We're in November. This is the time where we usually take the stock of where we've been in 2021 and make some decisions about what we do in 2022. What questions guide your reflection, and what questions help you choose the most alive 2022 as far as possible from being a zombie? What would you suggest?
Well, I think I'll be honest, I don't do this enough. But when I do it, I guess I've got that question, who do I need to become? But I need a question before that, which helps me answer that question. And what I tend to do when I remember, I'm actually, as I said, I'm in the middle of doing this now. I'm looking at what is it that I can bring? What is it that I know and people tell me and that I feel I've got a gift to do and I can bring? What can I offer? And how can I multiply that? So I'm currently reviewing all of the things that I've done this year and thinking, applying my own tools to myself to say, okay, how could that be? What would need to be true for that to be 10 times more effective or to have 10 times more impact? Because that's, I guess, maybe I'm in a stage of life where I want to do that. I'm starting to think about legacy. I'm starting to think about, how can these ideas, because I know they work. That's the thing. I know they work. I've seen them work in so many contexts. How can I get them in more hands? So I'm looking at innovating my what and innovating my how, because that's fundamentally a part of my why. Why am I here? I want to help people uncover better futures, create more prosperous futures, however you want to define prosperity. So when I'm thinking about end of 2022, I'm thinking, who do I need to become? What's the mindset shift that I need that is going to cause me to start to invest in amplifying capability in these areas? So one thing I'm doing, as a quick aside, finally, I've built an app that goes with the book that takes a team through the process of, okay, so we want to be more innovative in 30 days. What does that look like? Here's 4 workshops. You go through them, you build an innovation team plan, and you go. It's not ready for launch yet. It's still kind of just at beta stage. But that was one example of how do I amplify it? Well, I need to it can't just be me. There needs to be more ways for people to access the stuff.
Love that. Love that. So, this is the short formula that I am gathering from Alvin's work. What am I greatest at? How can I be 100 or 10 or 5 or 2 times more effective with my best self? And who do I need to become for that to come around? So, those 3 questions is a great way to finish this year and ponder alone with your team, with your company. With that, Alvin, thank you so, so very much. I appreciate you taking the time. It's such an honor to meet you now, finally, because we follow each other work for now, I don't know how many years, but it's a joy to meet. And I know our community is super excited because I can see there's so much reaction in the comments. So many, many thanks. Appreciate it so very much. Hey guys, download all the resources, start using them, And of course, we are excited to see you at the next Reinvention show. You will see all the announcements. We are happy to be back. We have many amazing plans for you ahead. And of course, always put in the comments what would you like us to tackle next? What topics, what suggestions, what guests? Meanwhile, Elvin, there's a lot of love for you here. Jean is speaking about how she loved this. There's somebody who is speaking about gratitude. Michael in Germany says, thank you both. There's a lot of love happening here. Thank you very much. And for everyone, see you at the next show. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.